Eli's heart pounded as he stared at the mortgage notice. Its bold red letters screaming foreclosure warning across the page. His parents' voices echoed in his mind, demanding he fund his sister's extravagant $300,000 European tour trip he couldn't afford. Not with the home he and Sam had scraped every penny to buy. Now, they'd gone behind his back, trying to mortgage that very home. The only place where he felt safe to love who he loved. In the heart of Brooklyn, Eli Carter's world was unraveling. At 28, he'd built a modest life with Sam, his partner of 3 years, in a cramped but cozy apartment they'd made their own. It wasn't mucho one-bedroom with creaky floors and a view of a graffiti-splashed alley, but it was theirs. A sanctuary where they could be themselves without judgment. Eli had always been the responsible one. The son who fixed problems, who put family first. But this time, his parents' demands were a betrayal too deep to fathom. Growing up in a conservative suburb of Albany, Eli had learned early to hide who he was. His parents, Martha and Richard Carter, were pillars of their church, their lives revolving around appearances and tradition. When Eli came out at 19, their reaction was a cold ultimatum: change or leave. He left. Years of silence followed, punctuated only by occasional tense calls about his younger sister. Lila, the golden child, could do no wrong. Her whims were law. Her dreams funded by family savings Eli had contributed to for years, believing it was for their collective future. Now, Lila, at 22, had declared she needed a transformative trip across Europe to find herself. The price tag? A staggering $300,000. Covering luxury hotels, private tours, and a wardrobe to match her influencer aspirations. When Eli refused to drain his savings, his parents didn't just pressure him, they guilt him, citing family duty, claiming Lila's happiness was his responsibility. "You're the stable one, Eli," his mother had said, her voice sharp over the phone. "You owe us this." When he held firm, they took it further, forging documents to put his apartment, his and Sam's home, up as collateral for a loan to fund Lila's trip. Eli sat on the couch, the mortgage notice trembling in his hands. Sam, his anchor, leaned closer, his dark eyes searching Eli's face. "We'll figure this out," Sam whispered, his voice steady despite the storm brewing around them. Sam, a social worker with a heart too big for his paycheck, had always been Eli's safe harbor. They'd met at a community center where Eli volunteered. Their connection instant. A quiet understanding that grew into love. But now, their home, their future was at risk, and Eli felt the weight of it crushing him. The apartment was quiet, save for the distant hum of Brooklyn traffic. Eli's phone buzzed. A text from his mother: "Lila needs this." "Eli, don't be selfish." He tossed the phone onto the coffee table, his chest tight. Selfish. The word stung. A dagger from the people who'd once promised to love him unconditionally. He thought of the years he'd spent trying to earn their approval. The late nights working as a freelance graphic designer to send money home. The dreams he'd shelved to keep the peace. And now, they'd crossed a line, threatening the one thing he'd built for himself. Sam took Eli's hand, his touch grounding. "They can't take this from us," he said, his voice fierce. "We'll fight this. Together." Eli nodded, but doubt gnawed at him. His parents had connections, resources, and a ruthless determination to get their way. How could he, a man barely scraping by, stand up to them? Yet, as he looked at Sam, at the life they'd carved out in this tiny apartment. He knew he had no choice. This was about more than a house site, was about their right to exist, to love, to build a future on their terms. The next morning, Eli woke to the smell of coffee and the sight of Sam hunched over his laptop, researching legal aid. "I found a lawyer who specializes in property disputes," Sam said, his eyes bright with determination. "Pro bono. We've got a shot." Eli felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly doused by the reality of their situation. Legal battles were costly, emotionally and financially, and his parents weren't known for backing down. Still, Sam's resolve was infectious. They spent the day gathering documents, proof of ownership, bank statements, anything to show the apartment was theirs alone. By afternoon, Eli's phone rang. It was his father, Richard. His tone clipped. "Eli, stop this nonsense. Sign the papers, or we'll make this harder than it needs to be." Eli's grip tightened on the phone. "You're trying to take my home, Dad." "Mine and Sam's." "How is that family?" There was a pause, then a cold reply. "You chose your path. This is about Lila now." The call ended, leaving Eli staring at the wall, his anger simmering. He thought of Lila, oblivious to the chaos her whims had caused, posting selfies from her latest shopping spree. That night, Eli and Sam sat down to strategize. They couldn't afford to lose their home, not just for the roof over their heads, but for what it represented, a place where they could be unapologetically themselves. Eli remembered the first night they'd spent here, laughing as they painted the walls a soft blue, dreaming of a future where they could marry, maybe adopt. That dream felt distant now, but Sam's hand in his reminded him it wasn't gone. "We're not just fighting for a house," Sam said softly. "We're fighting for us." Eli nodded, resolve hardening. He'd spent too long bending to his family's demands, hiding who he was to keep the peace. No more. He'd fight for their home, for Sam, for the life they deserved. But as he looked at the mortgage notice again, a new fear crept in. His parents had already started the process. Time was running out. The lawyer's office was a stark contrast to Eli and Sam's cluttered apartment, tucked in a Manhattan high-rise. It smelled of polished wood and ambition, the kind of place where hope felt like a luxury. Eli clutched a folder of documents, his knuckles white, as he and Sam sat across from Ms. Clara Nguyen, a sharp-eyed attorney who'd agreed to take their case. Clara leaned forward, her glasses glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Your parents falsified documents to list your property as collateral," she said, her voice calm but firm. "It's fraud, plain and simple. But proving it won't be easy. Thve got a good lawyer." Eli's stomach churned. His parents' attorney, a family friend from their church, had a reputation for winning at all costs. Clara laid out their options: file a lawsuit to block the mortgage, gather evidence of the forgery, and brace for a fight that could drag on for months. Back home, Eli felt the walls closing in. The apartment, once a haven, now felt like a battleground. Every creak of the floorboards reminded him of what was at stake. Sam, ever the optimist, tried to keep things light, cooking dinner with music playing softly in the background. But even Sam's smile couldn't hide the strain. "What if we lose?" Eli asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sam set down the spatula, his expression serious. "Then we start over. Together. They can't take that from us." Eli wished he shared Sam's certainty. His parents' betrayal wasn't just financial, it was personal. They'd never accepted him. Not really. Every call, every visit had been a test. a chance to prove he was still the son they wanted. Funding Lila's trip was supposed to be his redemption, a way to buy their approval. But mortgaging his home, that was a line he couldn't forgive. The next day, Eli dug into his parents' finances, something he'd avoided out of respect. Using old bank statements and emails, he pieced together a trail of transactions. His parents had been funneling money to Lila for years: designer clothes, private tutors, now this trip. But the numbers didn't add up. Their savings were depleted, their retirement accounts nearly empty. The mortgage on Eli's apartment wasn't just about Lila's tri-pit, was their desperate attempt to stay afloat. Eli called Lila, hoping to reason with her. She answered from a noisy cafe, her voice breezy. "Eli, it's not a big deal. Mom and Dad said you'd help. It's just a loan, right?" Her ignorance cut deeper than his parents' scheming. "Lila, they're trying to take my home," he said, his voice shaking. "Mine and Sam's." There was a pause, then a dismissive laugh. "You're being dramatic. It's just a house." The call ended, and Eli felt a hollow ache. Lila didn't care, not about him, not about Sam, not about the life they'd built. Sam suggested they confront his parents directly. "We need to see their faces," he said. "Make them explain why they're doing this." Reluctantly, Eli agreed. They drove upstate to Albany, the 3-hour trip heavy with silence. The Carter family home hadn't changed: white picket fence, manicured lawn, a facade of perfection. Martha answered the door, her smile tight. Richard stood behind her, arms crossed. "What's this about, Eli?" his mother asked, as if she didn't know. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Eli laid out the mortgage notice, the forged documents, his voice steady despite the anger bubbling inside. "You're trying to take our home," he said. "Why?" Richard's face hardened. "You've always been selfish, Eli. Lila needs this. You have a good job, a stable life. You can afford to help." Martha nodded, her eyes avoiding Sam. "It's for the family," she said, as if that justified everything. Sam spoke up, his voice calm but cutting. "This isn't about family. It's about control. You can't accept Eli for who he is, so you're punishing him." The room fell silent. Martha's lips trembled, but she said nothing. Richard stormed out, muttering about disrespect. Eli felt a strange mix of relief and grief. For the first time, he'd stood up to them. But the cost was clear. Any hope of reconciliation was gone. Back in Brooklyn, Clara called with news. She'd found a discrepancy in the mortgage application, a signature that didn't match Eli's. It was a small victory, but enough to file for an injunction. The legal battle was just beginning, but Eli felt a spark of hope. He looked at Sam, who was sketching plans for their future: maybe a small wedding, a dog, a life beyond this fight. "We're going to make it," Sam said, and for the first time in days, Eli believed him. The courtroom loomed like a stage for a play Eli never wanted to star in. The Manhattan courthouse was cold, its marble floors echoing with the weight of decisions. Eli sat beside Sam, his suit borrowed from a friend, feeling out of place among the polished lawyers. Clara, their attorney, was a beacon of calm, her briefcase stuffed with evidence of his parents' fraud. Across the room, his parents sat with their lawyer, a silver-haired man whose smug smile made Eli's skin crawl. The hearing was for a preliminary injunction to stop the mortgage process. Clara argued their case with precision, presenting the forged signature, the mismatched dates, the trail of lies. Eli's parents' lawyer countered with a narrative of family obligation, painting Eli as the ungrateful son who'd abandoned his sister's dreams. Mr. Carter has the means to support his family, the lawyer said, his voice dripping with condescension. He's chosen selfishness over duty. Eli's hands clenched under the table. Sam squeezed his knee, a silent reminder to stay steady. When it was Eli's turn to speak, he stood, his voice raw but clear. This isn't about money, he said. It's about my home, my life with Sam. My parents can't accept who I am, so they're trying to take it away. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, listened intently. She granted the injunction, a temporary reprieve, but warned that the full case would be a battle. Outside, the city buzzed with indifferent energy. Eli felt drained, the victory hollow. His parents hadn't looked at him once during the hearing. Sam pulled him into a hug, his warmth a lifeline. We're one step closer, Sam said. But Eli couldn't shake the fear that this was only the beginning. His parents' lawyer had hinted at a countersuit, claiming emotional distress. The idea of his family weaponizing their pain against him was almost too much to bear. Back at the apartment, Eli found an email from Lila. It was short, petulant. Why are you doing this to me? I need this trip. Attached was a photo of her in Paris, posing in front of the Eiffel Tower, her smile oblivious to the chaos she'd sparked. Eli deleted the email, his anger flaring. Lila wasn't just complicit, she was entitled, blind to the wreckage her demands had caused. He wondered if she'd ever see him as more than a means to an end. Sam suggested they take a break, go somewhere to clear their heads. They ended up at Coney Island, the boardwalk alive with summer crowds. The salty air and distant screams from the rides felt like a different world. They walked hand in hand, a small act of defiance in a world that still judged them. Remember when we came here last year? Sam asked, his smile soft. You won me that ridiculous stuffed shark. Eli laughed, the memory a brief escape. For a moment, they were just two people in love, not fighters in a war they didn't start. But reality crept back. Clara called with an update. The full trial was set for 3 months out. They needed more evidence. Witnesses. Anything to strengthen their case. Eli felt the weight settle back on his shoulders. He started reaching out to old friends. Anyone who could testify to his parents' manipulative tactics. Most were hesitant, unwilling to get involved in a family feud. But one, a former neighbor named Grace, agreed to help. She'd seen how Martha and Richard favored Lila, how they dismissed Eli's struggles. They always acted like you were a problem to fix, she told him over coffee. It wasn't right. Grace's words stayed with Eli, a validation he hadn't realized he needed. He thought of the years he'd spent trying to be the perfect son, hiding his truth to avoid their wrath. Coming out had been his first act of rebellion. But this fighting for his home, his life with Sam, was his stand. He wasn't just protecting a property. He was claiming his right to exist as he was, unapologetically. That night, Eli and Sam sat on their balcony, a tiny slab of concrete overlooking the city. The stars were faint, drowned by city lights. But Sam pointed out constellations anyway, making up names to make Eli smile. We're going to win this, Sam said, his voice fierce with conviction. Not just the house, but our life. They can't take that from us. Eli leaned against him, drawing strength from his certainty. The fight was far from over. But with Sam by his side, he felt ready for whatever came next. The weeks before the trial were a blur of preparation and anxiety. Eli and Sam turned their apartment into a war room. Papers strewn across the dining table. Coffee cups piling up. Clara guided them through depositions, coaching them on how to present their case without letting emotion derail them. But emotion was unavoidable. Every document, every email from his parents, was a reminder of the family Eli had lost, not to distance, but to betrayal. Eli's parents escalated their tactics. They sent letters to his clients, hinting at his unreliability, costing him 2 freelance contracts. "They're trying to break us financially," Sam said, his jaw tight. Eli nodded, his anger tempered by exhaustion. He'd always known his parents were stubborn, but this ruthlessness was new. They weren't just fighting for Lila's trip, they were fighting to control him, to punish him for choosing Sam, for choosing himself. Clara uncovered more evidence, a second set of forged documents, this time with Sam's name, implicating him in the fraud. It was a low blow, dragging Sam into their vendetta. "They think they can scare us," Sam said, his voice steady despite the hurt in his eyes. Eli felt a surge of protectiveness. Sam had given up so much to be with him, his own family's approval, a stable career path, and now he was caught in this mess. "I'm sorry," Eli whispered, but Sam shook his head. "We're in this together. Always." They reached out to more witnesses, including Sam's former boss, who'd seen Eli's parents dismiss his relationship at a community event. "They called it a phase," she recalled, her voice laced with disgust. "They said you'd come around once you've fixed yourself." Her testimony was a small but crucial piece, painting a picture of prejudice that bolstered their case. Eli felt a mix of gratitude and shame, gratitude for the support, shame that his family's rejection was so public. Lila's social media became a painful obsession for Eli. Her posts were a parade of extravagant yachts in Greece, champagne in Rome, funded partly by the money his parents had already siphoned from family accounts. She captioned one photo, "Living my truth," and Eli nearly threw his phone. Her truth was built on his sacrifice, his pain. He drafted a message to her, pouring out his hurt. But Sam stopped him. "She won't hear you," he said gently. "Not yet." Eli deleted the draft, but the ache lingered. One night, unable to sleep, Eli found an old photo album buried in a closet. It was from his childhood, filled with images of happier times, him and Lila building sandcastles, his parents smiling at a picnic. The memories felt like a different life, one where he believed love was unconditional. He showed the album to Sam, who traced a finger over a photo of teenage Eli, his smile tentative. "You were always fighting to be seen," Sam said. "You still are?" The trial loomed closer, and Clara warned them of the emotional toll. "Your parents will try to make this about your lifestyle," she said. "They'll use it to discredit you." Eli had expected this, but hearing it stung. His love for Sam wasn't a weapon, but they'd wield it as one. He and Sam spent evenings practicing their testimony, trying to anticipate every attack. Sam was a natural, his calm demeanor unshakable. But Eli struggled, his voice cracking when he spoke of his parents' betrayal. A week before the trial, Eli got a call from an unexpected ally, his cousin, Nate, who'd been estranged from the family for years. Nate had left after his own falling out with Richard, tired of the family's rigid expectations. "I heard what they're doing," Nate said. "I'll testify. They did the same to me, guilted me into giving up my savings for Lila." His support was a lifeline, a reminder that Eli wasn't alone in his fight. As the trial date approached, Eli and Sam took a rare evening off, walking through Prospect Park. The trees were turning autumn gold. And for a moment, they could pretend the world wasn't closing in. Sam stopped by a pond, pulling Eli close. "No matter what happens," he said, "this is what matters." Eli kissed him, the world fading to just the two of them. They were fighting for their home. But more than that, they were fighting for their right to love, to exist. And that, Eli knew, was worth everything. The trial began on a gray October morning, the courtroom packed with tension and hushed whispers. Eli sat beside Sam, his palms sweaty, as Clara laid out their case. She was methodical, presenting the forged documents, the financial trail, and witness statements from Grace and Nate. Eli's parents sat stone-faced, their lawyers spinning a tale of a fractured family, blaming Eli's choices for the rift. "My clients only wanted to secure their daughter's future," he said, casting a pointed glance at Eli and Sam. When Eli took the stand, his heart raced. The room felt suffocating, every eye on him. He spoke of the apartment, how he and Sam had saved for years to buy it, how it was their refuge in a world that often rejected them. "My parents never accepted me," he said, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "They're punishing me for loving Sam, for building a life they don't approve of." The judge's expression was unreadable, but Eli felt a weight lift. He'd spoken his truth, no matter the outcome. Sam's testimony was next, his calm voice cutting through the room's tension. He spoke of their life together, the small joys, cooking dinner, watching old movies, dreaming of a future. "This isn't just about a house," he said. "It's about our right to exist as we are." Eli's eyes burned with tears. Sam's strength, his unwavering love, was a reminder of why they were fighting. The defense called Martha to the stand. She played the grieving mother, her voice trembling as she spoke of Eli's rebellion and Lila's needs. "We only wanted what's best for our family," she said, dabbing her eyes. Eli's stomach twisted. Her tears felt like a performance, a way to justify their betrayal. Richard's testimony was colder, focused on numbers, claiming Eli's refusal to help had forced their hand. Neither mentioned Sam by name, as if he didn't exist. Cross-examination was brutal. Clara pressed Martha on the forged signatures, the secret loan applications. Martha faltered, her answers vague. Richard was defiant. But cracks showed when Clara presented emails proving they'd planned to use Eli's apartment from the start. The judge's frown deepened, and Eli felt a flicker of hope. But the defense had one last card, Lila. Lila took the stand, her designer dress a stark contrast to the courtroom's severity. She spoke of her trip as a journey of self-discovery, claiming Eli's refusal was selfish. "He's always been jealous of me," she said, her voice dripping with entitlement. Eli stared, stunned. He'd loved her, protected her, sacrificed for her. Her words were a knife, twisting deeper with every syllable. Clara's cross-examination was relentless. "Did you know your parents used your brother's home as collateral?" she asked. Lila shrugged, her nonchalance damning. "I thought they had it handled." The courtroom murmured, and Eli saw the judge's eyes narrow. Lila's indifference was a gift to their case, but it broke something in Eli. She wasn't just ignorant, she was complicit. The trial adjourned for the day, leaving Eli and Sam drained. They walked home in silence, the city's noise a dull roar. At the apartment, Eli collapsed onto the couch, his emotions a tangle of anger and grief. Sam sat beside him, pulling him close. "We're doing this for us," Sam said, his voice soft but firm. And we're not alone. Eli nodded, clinging to Sam's warmth. The witnesses. Clara. Even Nate, they were their family now. The ones who saw them for who they were. That night, Eli dreamed of his childhood home. Of a time when he believed his parents' love was unbreakable. He woke with tears on his cheeks, Sam's arms around him. The trial wasn't just about saving their home, it was about reclaiming his worth. Proving he deserved love. Not just from Sam, but from himself. As dawn broke, Eli felt a quiet resolve. They'd face the next day, and the next, together. No matter what the judge decided, they'd already won something his parents could never take, each other. The trial's second week was a grueling marathon of arguments and emotions. Eli felt like he was living in a pressure cooker, every day bringing new revelations. Clara presented bank records showing his parents had drained a family trust fund, meant for both Eli and Lila, to finance Lila's earlier escapades. The judge's interest peaked. This wasn't just about the apartment anymore. It was about a pattern of financial manipulation. Eli's parents' lawyer fought back, calling character witnesses from their church who painted them as devoted parents wronged by a rebellious son. One woman, a family friend, claimed Eli had turned his back on God by choosing Sam. The words stung, but Eli kept his eyes on Sam, who sat unwavering in the gallery. Sam's presence was a reminder that love, not judgment, defined him. Clara called Nate to the stand, and his testimony was a turning point. He spoke of his own experience, how Richard and Martha had pressured him to fund Lila's whims, how they'd shunned him when he refused. They don't see Eli as their son, Nate said, his voice heavy. They see him as a resource. The courtroom was silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Even the judge seemed moved, her pen pausing as she listened. Outside the courtroom, Eli and Sam faced a swarm of reporters. The case had gained traction online, with some calling it a fight for LGBTQ+ rights, others a family drama gone wrong. Eli hated the attention, the way his life was dissected for clicks. But Sam saw an opportunity. Let's tell our story, he urged. They met with a local journalist, sharing their truth, not just the legal battle, but their love, their dreams, the home they'd built. The article went viral, and messages of support flooded in, from strangers who saw themselves in Eli and Sam's struggle. But the publicity came with a cost. Eli's parents doubled down, their lawyer leaking stories to conservative outlets, framing Eli as the villain. One headline read, "Son betrays family for lifestyle choice." Eli's inbox filled with hate mail. But among the vitriol were emails from others like him, people whose families had rejected them, who found hope in his fight. "You're not alone," one wrote, and Eli clung to those words like a lifeline. Lila's absence from the trial's later days was noticeable. She'd returned to Europe, her social media silent. Eli wondered if she felt any guilt, but he doubted it. Her world was one of privilege, untouched by the consequences of her demands. He tried to focus on the trial, but her betrayal lingered, a wound that wouldn't heal. Clara uncovered a final piece of evidence, a recorded voicemail from Richard, left on Eli's phone months earlier, demanding he do his duty or face consequences. The judge allowed it into evidence, and when it played, Richard's cold voice filled the room. "You owe us, Eli. Don't make us take what's ours." The jury, silent until now, shifted uncomfortably. Eli saw his mother's face pale, her composure cracking. As the trial neared its end, Eli and Sam spent a quiet evening at home. They cooked dinner, the simple act of chopping vegetables together a reminder of their resilience. Sam raised a glass of cheap wine, his eyes shining. "To us," he said. "To fighting for what's ours." Eli clinked his glass, his heart full. The trial could take their home, but it couldn't take their love, their strength, their chosen family. The night before closing arguments, Eli wrote a letter to his parents, one he'd never send. He poured out his pain, his love, his hope for a day when they'd see him as their son, not a problem. He sealed it in an envelope, tucking it into the photo album. It was closure, not for them, but for him. As he climbed into bed beside Sam, he felt lighter. Whatever the verdict, he'd reclaimed his voice. And that was a victory no one could take away. Closing arguments were a clash of narratives. Clara painted Eli and Sam as victims of greed and prejudice, their home a symbol of their hard-won freedom. "This isn't just about property," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "It's about a family's refusal to accept their son's truth." The defense countered with a story of duty, claiming Eli's lifestyle had torn the family apart. The jury's faces were unreadable, and Eli's heart sank. Would they see him as human, or as the caricature his parents had painted? After the arguments, the jury deliberated for 2 agonizing days. Eli and Sam tried to keep busy, but the waiting was torture. They walked the city, from the High Line to the Hudson, finding solace in small moments, Sam's hand in his, the way the city seemed to hold them close. At night, they lay awake, talking about the future. "If we lose," Eli said, his voice trembling, "we'll find another place. Start over." Sam nodded, but his eyes were fierce. "We won't lose." On the 3rd morning, the jury returned. The courtroom was silent as the foreman read the verdict. The mortgage was nullified, the forged documents deemed fraudulent. Eli and Sam were awarded damages for emotional distress, a sum that wouldn't erase the pain but would help them rebuild. Eli's parents were ordered to repay the family trust fund, a blow to their finances. The judge's voice was stern as she addressed Martha and Richard. "Your actions were not just illegal, they were unconscionable." Eli felt a rush of relief, but it was bittersweet. His parents left the courtroom without a glance, their lawyer trailing behind. The victory saved their home, but it cemented the rift with his family. Sam squeezed his hand, his smile a quiet triumph. "We did it," he whispered. Eli nodded, tears blurring his vision. They'd won, but the cost was a family he'd once believed in. Outside, supporters waited, friends, Nate, even strangers from the article. They cheered, some holding signs, "Love wins." Eli and Sam embraced, the weight of months lifting, if only slightly. Clara joined them, her usual stoicism softened by a smile. "You two are stronger than you know," she said. Eli felt the truth of it. This fight had tested them, but it had also shown them what they were capable of. Back home, the apartment felt different, still small, still creaky, but undeniably theirs. Eli looked at the mortgage notice, now just a piece of paper, and tossed it into the trash. Sam pulled him into a dance. No music needed, just the rhythm of their laughter. For the first time in months, Eli felt free. But the victory didn't erase the scars. Eli thought of Lila, still silent, still gallivanting through Europe. He wondered if she'd ever understand the damage she'd caused. He thought of his parents, their pride wounded, their control shattered. Part of him still loved them, still hoped for a day when they'd see him. But that hope was smaller now, overshadowed by the life he'd built with Sam. They invited friends over that weekend, a celebration of survival. Grace brought wine. Nate brought stories. And the apartment filled with warmth. As the night wound down, Eli stood on the balcony, Sam's arms around him. The city stretched out before them, a canvas of possibility. "What's next?" Sam asked, his voice soft. Eli smiled, his heart full. "Everything," he said. "We've got everything." Months after the trial, life settled into a new rhythm. Eli and Sam used the damages to pay off debts, renovate their apartment, and start a savings fund for their Futuria wedding. Maybe. Or a bigger place one day. The apartment, once a battleground, was now a home again, filled with new memories. They painted the walls a brighter blue, hung photos of their journey, and adopted a scruffy dog named Hope, who curled up between them at night. Eli returned to freelancing, his reputation intact thanks to the public support. Sam took on a new role at the community center, mentoring queer youth who faced their own family struggles. Together, they built a life that felt like a defiance of everything they'd overcome. But the past lingered. Eli checked Lila's social media less often, her posts a painful reminder of a sister who'd chosen herself over him. She'd sent one email, a half-hearted apology that felt more like an excuse. He didn't respond. His parents were another silence. They'd moved to a smaller house, their finances strained by the trial's outcome. Eli heard through Nate that they'd stopped attending church, their community fractured by the scandal. He didn't know if he felt pity or relief. Maybe both. He wrote them another letter. This one sent, asking for a conversation, not reconciliation. They didn't reply, but Eli felt lighter for trying. He'd done his part. One spring evening, Eli and Sam hosted a dinner for their chosen family, Grace, Nate, Clara, and a few new friends from the community center. The table was crowded, laughter spilling over plates of pasta and wine. Eli looked around, his heart swelling. This was family, not bound by blood but by love, by shared battles and triumphs. Sam caught his eye, raising a glass. "To home," he said, and everyone echoed it. Later, they walked Hope through the neighborhood, the city alive with spring's promise. Eli thought of the mortgage notice, the trial, the years of hiding who he was. It all led here, to this moment, to Sam's hand in his, to a life they'd fought for and won. "I used to think love had to hurt," Eli said, his voice quiet. Sam stopped, turning to face him. "And now?" Eli smiled, the answer clear. "Now I know it heals." Their story spread, not just in articles, but in whispers among those who needed hope. Eli and Sam became a beacon for others, proof that love could endure, that homes could be saved, that families could be chosen. They didn't have all the answers, but they had each other, and that was enough. As they stood under a street lamp, Hope tugging at her leash, Eli felt a peace he hadn't known was possible. The world wasn't perfect, his parents' silence proved that, but it was theirs. They'd fought for their place in it, and they'd won. Not just a home, but a life, a love, a future. And as Sam leaned in to kiss him, Eli knew, with every fiber of his being, that this was the ending that mattered.